Hello YouTube, it's me again. Today I'm doing another 2014 midterm coverage video. I haven't done one of these in a while, mainly because I've been focused more on Star Wars and Minecraft. Recently I've been really focused on SWTOR, so we're gonna kind of deviate from that course for a little bit to talk about future of our country. So yeah, as you know, there's like 20 something days until the election, and these are I'm gonna give you guys my ratings as of September 25th. I'm gonna be updating my predictions in 2 weeks, which will be on October 25th. So yeah, so right off the bat, there's not a whole lot of Republican seats in danger. Most of them, except for about 4 or 5 of them, I'd say, are roughly safe because Republicans are running in very strong red states, very deep red states, and actually let's just wait to get to that. I'm just giving you guys the solid seats as of now. Now again, this could rapidly change, but the only seat I know for sure is not going to change is Alabama because Jeff Sessions there is running unopposed, and he will definitely be in the next Congress no matter what happens in this crazy election season. So, yeah. I don't believe I'm missing anything. Oh, yeah, I missed one. So, oncology is safe in a very blue state, actually. So, yeah, here are the safe Republican holds that are guaranteed to happen no matter what. I'm confident that by election day, Republicans will win those seats at the minimum. Now, Democrats, now they're defending most of their seats up this cycle. They have about 4 seats that are basically in the bag, mainly because they're in deep blue states, and I mean they know for a fact that they're gonna win. Everyone knows that they're gonna win and hold those particular 4 seats. Hawaii, Delaware, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. That's uncompetitive. For Republicans, they will definitely hold Maine, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Wyoming, and Idaho, and the 2 special elections that are going on there. So, yeah, now for the likely Republican holds, Thad Cochran, most people say he's safe. I would generally agree with that, but the problem is the Democrat Travis Childers, a former congressman who got wiped out in the 2010 wave, he is running as a conservative Democrat. He is a conservative Democrat, or as you'd like to know, a blue dog. He's a blue dog. And Cochran very narrowly survived the primary against Tea Party-backed State Senator Chris McDaniel, and they haven't really backed him. So that's caused Cochran to be really under 50%. He's like in the mid 40s. Childers is in the kind of the mid 30s. So he's well within striking distance. I don't think he'll win ultimately, but I'm pretty sure Cochran will win. But I'm pretty sure this will be Cochran's last term because I'm pretty sure McDaniel will run again in 2020 when his seat will be up, and I'm pretty sure McDaniel will try everything to win. So I'm pretty sure this will be Cochran's last term. Besides, he's like in his 70s. I'm gonna say he's 74. Don't quote me on this. I know he's in the 70s. That's for a fact. I'm sorry if I'm making him feel old. I really apologize for that. In Georgia, where Secretary Chambliss is retiring, David Perdue, who narrowly won against Congressman Jack Kingston, everyone thought Congressman Kingston was going to win, but ultimately Perdue won, which Purdue's my preferred candidate, to be honest. Yeah. So, no. Okay, so that race is leaning Purdue. He's been ahead in very reliable polling. He's been ahead. He's near 50%. He's not quite there. He's like in the upper to mid 40s. So yeah, another race in Kentucky, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's race. That's a very likely race because ever since the primary, Matt Bevin's supporters, who Matt Bevin was Tea Party back businessman who tried to face the Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. McConnell will easily beat him, and Bevin's supporters are more or less reluctantly backing McConnell. So ever since the primary, McConnell's been in a very strong position. He's been consistently leading. And ignore the Bluegrass poll that shows Grimes ahead. That is a desperate internal poll. Don't buy into it. If you do, then I don't know. Then who you are. And so yeah. And then Republican. Other than that, um, West Virginia, there's also like three likely pickups that I'm pretty sure will happen. West Virginia Congresswoman Capito versus Secretary of State Natalie Tennant. That's a likely pickup. In South Dakota, former Governor Mike Rounds versus former aide Rick Wayland and former Senator Larry Presler. That's a likely pickup, despite the fact that everyone believes the Survey USA poll, which is a garbage poll in my opinion, and they think, oh, it's going to be tight. No, it's not really. I'm pretty sure Rounds will win. He won't win overwhelmingly, I'm sure, but I'm pretty sure he'll win solidly come election night. And also, where Senator Walsh was running, he was the appointee, but he had to withdraw from the race because of plagiarism scandals. Actually, so the Democrats appoint kind of nominate a new nominee, State Senator Amanda Curtis. Yeah, she's basically in a more or less same position, maybe even worse than she was against Walsh was against his battle against Congressman Daines. Curtis is behind by roughly 20 points in the polls, so this is pretty likely. Now, Montana does have a history for electing Democratic senators. They have Senator John Tester, and they had Senator Mac Baucus, who was previously the owner of the seat that's up. But he was retiring, so he was appointed ambassador to China, and then he ultimately was, he got picked to be ambassador to China, and Democrats nominated Lieutenant Governor Joe Walsh, who was already running for the seat, so that gave him a bit of advantage. Now, for the likely Democratic seats, there's quite a few, actually. So, New Jersey, Senator Cory Booker, who won a special election last year against 1978 nominee Jeff Bell. Now, normally in normal circumstances, this should be a slam dunk for Democrats, but Cory Booker's been roughly in the low 50s. He's even been under 50% a lot, and Bell's roughly in striking distance. Now, like last poll showed it, Booker 48, Bell 39. Now, New Jersey is a very strong blue state. Bell's is almost like he's kind of like a Tea Partier, but Bell is a promising candidate, I think, and I'd love to see him win. In Virginia, under most circumstances, this should be a purple state. It was a red state until it voted for Obama twice. Also, this is a likely Democratic race. Ed Gillespie's starting to gain traction with 20 days to go. But the problem is, in August, in 2006, Jim Webb was facing George Allen. It was already a 50-50 race at that point. Gillespie was still trailing. So I'm not as optimistic about Gillespie's chances, but it's good to see that he's starting to show signs of life as of now. Illinois Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin versus State Senator Jim Oberweis. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. Again, this is another likely race. Granted, Durbin's been roughly around 50%. His lead has been not overwhelming, so that's a likely race. Also, I should note for Booker, he is starting to be over 50%, like in some polls, but it's not like a guaranteed thing. And also, as I fill these in, please watch the numbers here. Okay, so Minnesota, Senator Al Franken versus businessman Mike McFadden. That is a likely race. McFadden is more or less within striking distance of Senator Franken, who nearly won the seat in 2008, but there hasn't been a whole lot of life signs for that. And also there's New Mexico. That is a more or less, I'm gonna call it, well, it's more, I don't know if I should call it safe or likely. I will leave it as safe, because I think that's what I put on my Twitter. Just let me check. Yeah, you can see my Twitter feed. If you want to follow me, just know Master Season. But yeah, I did rate it as of September 25th. I did rate it as safety. So under most circumstances, you think this race would be competitive, right? New Mexico trending blue, but it's still battleground technically. Senator Tom Udall, who won the seat easily in 2008, he's going up against a former Marine and former party chairman Alan Wade. Udall has been ahead. He's been above 50%. But his lead, again, hasn't been that overwhelming, so I'm really keeping an eye on this. This could be a sleeper come election day if Obama's approval ratings gets that bad. And it is pretty bad in New Mexico, but so far Udall is really popular, and the Republicans aren't paying that much attention down the way, so it's kind of sad, but I really think this could be a good race if Republicans invested. But, there's always 2020. Now, Oregon. Now, this was a promising race earlier in the year. Senator Jeff Merkley, somewhat vulnerable against a challenge. and they nominated a good Republican candidate, Dr. Monica Webby. Now, originally on paper, Oregon is a solidly blue state. It did vote for Obama by double digits in the 2012 election, but there was a poll out like early before, roughly around the primary, that showed Merkley trailing by 4. Now I was jumping for joy, but after like the domestic abuse scandal from Webby, I think that just basically ended her campaign, and I think this is going to be safety probably by election day. I think because she's been behind by a lot, so yeah, that's not too promising. Okay, so that's the blue states that are kind of lower tier races, but again, we should still keep an eye on them because they could become competitive in the next 20 days. Not that it's likely to happen, but in politics, anything happens. Now, let's go on to the leaning R races for the Republicans that they're likely to pick up. Let's start with Arkansas. So, Senator Mark Pryor is the last Democratic senator standing in the increasing red state. Congressman Tom Cotton, who is a more or less of a Tea Party guy, he has been consistently ahead of Senator Mark Pryor. I'm pretty sure by election day, Pryor will fall. He will probably lose. In Louisiana, this Senator Mary Landrieu versus the establishment can pick, and my preferred candidate, Congressman Bill Cassidy, versus former Air Force officer and Tea Party backed guy Rob Ness. Now read this. Open primary election day runoff on December 6th. The runoff occurs if no one gets the 50% knockout round. Now, overall, I would say the race is leaning R because Congressman Cassidy has been consistently ahead of Landrieu in the runoff. Landry's been more or less ahead in the jungle primary. She's been way below 50%. This is definitely going to go to a runoff. I'm pretty sure if it goes to a runoff, Cassidy will be the favorite to win. But Landry does have a history of surviving tough challenges, so if she survives, we shouldn't be all that surprised. I'm not saying she is, but I mean the odds are stacked against her, but I'm just saying. And what else? What else did I rate this? I'm looking at this. Okay, so I guess maybe at some point we can. Okay, now let's go to the leaning Democrat races. So, Now, earlier in the year, this was a prime pick opportunity. Senator Carl Levin was retiring, and Democrats nominated Congressman Gary Peters versus the former Secretary of State Terry Lynn Liett. Now, this was a toss-up, maybe even leaning R earlier in the year, but ever since the summer, roughly, this has been going against the Republicans. So, Gary Peters, I would say he's the favorite at this current point in time. Not the September ratings, but at this current point in time. I would rate this as likely D, but I'm reflecting this as of the September updates. Now, there was for a time, a couple weeks ago, that polls were showed like this was within a few points, but then Peters just started gaining. I'm pretty sure Peters will win. And besides, with the close governor race also going on, which I'll get into in a minute, this is really stacked against Land. Now, granted, she'd have to pull an upset, I think, in order to win. Peters will probably get a promotion come November. And also in New Hampshire, Senator Jeanne Shaheen versus former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown. He moved last year, and now he is challenging Senator Shaheen. This race is so far leaning D, but this is drifting towards a toss-up, more or less. But as of the September updates, this is a leaning D race. October, this will probably be a toss-up. It depends on what polls come out next. So, yeah, this is a leaning D race. Ever since roughly a week or two before the primary, polls show that it was finally getting close. But before that, ever since Scott Brown jumped in the race, it was close, and then it was looking increasingly like this was going to be a good race for Shaheen, and it narrowed all of a sudden, in August, and then it's been very close ever since. Brown's actually led in 2 polls fairly recently, but Shaheen has mostly led for most of the race. So she's as of September, she's still favored, but we have to really see how this is gonna go, So, so right now, this is how it stands. 46 Democrats, 49 Republicans. That's what they're favored. Republicans are on the verge of at least tying the race. And if they can win 3 of these races, they hold Kansas, and they pick up either Alaska, Colorado, Iowa, and North Carolina. You can make any combination with that. Personally, I think that they're probably at least maybe pick up 3 of these, and maybe at the current as of the September update, maybe even now that they could hold. Well, as of the September update, they were going to lose Kansas, but now like it's starting to trend towards Pat Roberts. Now, I would say as of the September updates, well, it was September updates. This was a leaning independent race, but it just started becoming a toss up, really, kind of trending with independent. And polls after that showed that Orman was ahead after I did the rating, so I can't go back and go back in time and change it. But I would say that this is becoming more or less of a 50-50 race as of like the October update and the final ratings and projections of my race years. So now this was supposed to be over when Pat Roberts won re-nomination. He won by only 7 points, which was pretty bad. Really, I expected it to be a landslide, not overwhelming, but pretty good. But he really underperformed. He was a 48-41 victory in his favor, so not good. But, yeah. So in Iowa, Congressman Bruce Braley versus State Senator Joni Ernest. This is actually probably in the future October update. This is probably a leaning R race, but it's a toss-up as of the September update. So pretty now wait. Now earlier in the year, this looked like this was going to be Braley's race. He's going to get a promotion, but then Ernest won the primary overwhelmingly, and then it was a back and forth race. Now Ernest is starting to gain traction as election day nears. Ernest is actually a really good candidate. Everyone thought she's a second tier. She's a top tier, actually, now. So I'm pretty sure that Republicans are favored to win in the October update. But again, it really depends on what polls come out. Okay, now, next, Colorado. Senator Mark Udall versus Congressman Cory Gardner. Now, originally, this was supposed to be Senator Mark Udall versus 2010 and Tea Party-backed attorney Ken Buck. It was supposed to be those two, because Ken Buck ran in 2010. He lost to Senator Michael Bennet by 2 points, very narrowly, 48-46. So Udall was like prepared to do the same thing that Bennet was going to do. But then Gardner originally declined, but then he jumped into the race. So everyone in the primary that was in, they just dropped out and let Gardner win it like on post. And from that point, really, it was trending Udall. And then there was a poll that showed Gardner in the lead, and then Udall mostly led. There was a rare break for Gardner, and then maybe about a month ago, I'd say things have started breaking towards Gardner's way. Now, when Udall was winning, I was actually questioning, is Gardner actually the best challenger in the country, because he's failing the gain traction at this point. And when I rated this in August, I gave Democrats a 60% chance of holding the seat, and then in September I moved it to 50-50. Next update, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a race in favor of Gardner's, but again, I can't really comment on that. And now in Alaska, Senator Mark Begich versus Dan Sullivan. Now, roughly before the primary, Begich was leading, arguably, and with an occasional Sullivan lead, and then things were more or less backward and forth, and then after the primary, Sullivan condensed his support, and he's been really kind of consistently beating Begich ever since. Even though there was 2 internals that came out there show, oh, Begich is ahead. Not really, don't believe that, but Begich ran a really good campaign up until he aired that ad that showed Dan Sullivan, who's a former military trooper. I think he was a Marine. Yeah, he was a Marine, and he was the former Attorney General. He was appointed, and then he became the Department of Natural Resources chair. And he aired an ad that saying he supported reduced sentences for sex offenders, and that's really backfiring him. Sullivan's really favored the lead to win at this point. Now, if the October updates were now, I'd probably rate this as leaning R, but I can't because, again, I'm just showing you the September updates. And lastly, North Carolina. Former state senator, really. Senator Kay Hagan versus State House Speaker Tom Tillis. Now, this was a good top-tier race. It still is. But the thing is, it's really been a toss-up for ever since, really, the season began, although it was a little bit more leaning D. And then ever since, so really Hagan's been consistently leading, and maybe around January Tillis started getting a couple of polls lead, and it was kind of back and forth. And then Tillis won the primary, which for Democrats that was bad, because Tillis was the best candidate probably out of the entire field. So mostly it was a Hagan leading race, but it went back and forth from time to time. And then ever since Tillis was trapped in his summer session, because he's still the State House Speaker, things were trending heavily towards Hagan. Then, after the summer session ended, things kind of got a break for Tillis. And then other than really that, from that point onwards, ever since that kind of occasional break for Tillis, things have been really trending back towards Hagen's way. So, as if the election were held today, I'd say Hagen would probably win, and I wouldn't be really surprised because she's ran a really good campaign. Heck, she's probably run the smartest campaign among Democrats, really. So, but again, this is a toss-up. And in September, and the August update, I rated as a 50-50 race, and then I rated as a 55-45 race in favor of Hagen. I don't know what I'm going to rate as October, but I really have to see. So that's the outlook on the Senate. So 46 Democrats, 49 Republicans, five Democrats are safe, 5 Democrats are likely to win their races, 2 Democratic races are leaning. There's 5 toss-ups, 3 leaning towards Republicans, 5 likely, and 11 safe. So, yeah, if I'm making my money on the Republicans, really, not only because they're my party, but I'm pretty sure that they'd probably if the election were held today, with the leaning and likelies, I'd assume that her party would lean the likely leaning Republican, and the parties would win their likely leaning races, and I'm pretty sure Republicans would win at least 3 of the 5 toss-ups. So they gain 3, 4, 5, 6. They gain 8 seats, but they lose 1. So. Well, they may lose 1. It really depends. So maybe they'd have 7 or 8 pickups, I'd say. So, yeah. So that's enough blabbering onto the Senate. Now let's go on to the governor's races, another important part. So, yeah. Now for the record, these are likely leading races. I'm trying to go fast through as fast as I can through this. So for Democrats. This is more favorable to them than the Senate is to Republicans. Here's why. In 2010, Republicans, they won a lot of races, and now 4 years later, all those guys are up. Most particularly, Tea Party guys that swept on the wave. So here are the safe Democratic holds: California and New York. And did I rate anything else? Let's see. No, that's really it. That's how sad. 2 safe Democrats. Governor Jerry Brown, California, and Governor Andrew Cuomo, New York. Safe Republicans. Let's see. South Dakota. I know that's 1, and I know. And there's a couple safe Republican races also. There's not a whole lot, but I know that Republicans have a lot more safe races than the Democrats do. I have to occasionally go back and look because I don't fully remember everything because, again, I posted these nearly like a month ago. These races nearly a month ago, so. Come on, okay. I wish these were a little faster. So, yeah, and honestly, a little note on Ohio. Ohio's the central swing state in presidential elections, and originally John Kasich started out as one of the most vulnerable incumbents, and now he's probably one of the more safest. As the Democratic nominee, county executive Ed Fitzgerald, he's run a pretty lousy campaign with the scandals and all. This basically is his race to win. He will win. If he wins re-election by the margin he is, he'll be a top tier. Not top tier, but he will be a good presidential candidate. In Texas, at some point, I decided to rate this as safer, which will likely are originally, but because soon-to-be Governor Greg Abbott, really, Attorney General Greg Abbott versus State Senator Wendy Davis, she filibustered the abortion bill in Texas. And really, Abbott's been consistently ahead. Maybe the closest was 5 points late last year. But other than that, despite the Texas Elysium poll that showed this was a 9-point race, and everyone's and then everyone Daily Kos is this is gonna be a close race, and Wendy Davis is gonna win. No, that's not gonna happen. Abbott will win. Democrats have not held the state house in Texas since '94, since George W. Bush held the governorship there. I don't think it's gonna break that way. Texas may turn blue, but I don't think it's gonna be anytime soon. And there's also in Nevada, Governor Brian Sandoval, his race, he is really favored to win, really. I mean, Nevada the Democrats have a registration advantage in Nevada, and I imagine Democrats wanted to knock off Sandoval, but Sandoval's really popular, and really, he's just Democrats didn't nominate like maybe a third-tier candidate, economic professor. He's a development manager, Bob Goodman. So I don't think Goodman's likely to win the race. Again, upset, not out of the question. But it's remote. So those are the safe Republican incumbents in Nevada, Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, and Ohio. Now, the likely races for Republicans, because they have the majority, 29, Republicans 21 Democrats. Democrats need a net of 5 seats to regain the majority of governorships. So here are the likely Republican races. Iowa, Governor Terry Branstad, his race against Senate Majority Whip Jack Hatch. He is heavily favored to win re-election. I'm pretty sure by that point, I'm sure he will be re-elected by that point in November. He's going for a 6th term in Iowa, and he'll be like one of the longest-serving governors if he wins re-election. And Nebraska, now this would be a safe Republican seat, but again, as of September, this was a likely race because Chuck Hasselbrook, the Democrat nominee, he was within striking distance of businessman 2006 Senate nominee Pete Ricketts. But I'm pretty sure with the new YouGov polls out, this is going to be a safe R race by the October update I do. And let's see, New Mexico, Governor Susana Martinez versus Attorney General Gary King. Susana Martinez, she's been ahead by double digits. She's going to win re-election by a wide margin. She could even be considered a 2016 candidate, really. South Carolina, Governor Nikki Haley versus 2010 nominee Vincent Shaheen. They ran against each other, in 2010. Haley won by 4 in a very good Republican year. And this looks like it may even be better, and she's ahead by double digits. So, I'd say she's really heavily favored to win. Now, let me see also. Illinois is a good Republican pickup for the Republicans, but here's the thing. This was in September. It's October now. This is an example of Republican incompetency, because Quinn is so unpopular, and he was down by double digits. Now he's ahead. So, Quinn was doing what he was doing in 2010 with Bill Brady. Brady would have been the governor had he. For some reason, Quinn was able to win. I don't know the exact reason, but Quinn has a knack for making us mispredict his chances. So this rating will definitely change. I know for a fact Illinois will change. It'll probably be toss-up or maybe even Democratic favored. Depending on what polls come out, it really depends. And I have to occasionally look at Twitter for this, but I think that's it. Okay. Now, Democrats, they need a net pickup of 5 seats. So really, where do they start? Well, first off, right off the bat, they're going to knock off Tom Corbett, who's the Tea Party governor there, the Republican governor. They will probably knock him off no matter what. Now, did I rate this likely or safe? It's probably going to be safe by the October update, but I mean, I did rate it as of now. This was a likely rate pickup for Democrats. So, yeah, they're also favored to keep Vermont, the gubernatorial minority leader Peter Shumlin. His race, he's been under 50% against a very little-known Republican businessman, Scott Milne. So Milne could win, but Peter Shumlin is close to 50%. So, yeah, another race, New Hampshire, where the hotly contested Senate races, Governor Maggie Hassan, the former state Senate majority leader, versus businessman Walt Havenstein. Havenstein's really been catching up to Hassan, actually. And maybe soon he can narrow the gap. He's roughly within high single digits to low double digits of Hassan. Like, he's trailing though, but so he could still win, but I think as of now this is Hassan's favorite to win. Also, Minnesota, Governor Mark Dayton versus County Commissioner Jeff Johnson. It'll take a good wave to knock Dayton out. Dayton, like Hassan and Shumlin, really like Hassan. He's been ahead by low double-digit margins to high single-digit margins. So he is ahead in that race. Oregon, Governor John Kitzhaber versus State Representative Dennis Richardson. Now, early on, with two Republican polls show a really promising race, but then after that, Kitzhaber's been ahead by double digits. But now, some polls are showing that it's within 7 points. So, but this is really Kitzhaber is really favored at this point, to be honest. So, yeah, but this will be his last term because he announced that this will be his last term he seeks because he's running for a non-consecutive fourth term. He was a two-term governor previously, so now he is trying to. Now Republicans, they could win, but I think it's going to take a good sized wave to knock Tabor out. Now Richardson, he's a promising candidate. He's a former Vietnam veteran, and he's been in the state legislature. Richardson could win. Chris Christie has campaigned with him once or twice. So this is going to be a close race in Oregon, more or less, depending on how election night turns out, I think. But we all have to see. And now there's Kansas. They're also favored, as of now, to pick up and as of the September update, they're favored to pick up Kansas because they're facing off against Governor Sam Brownback. He is extremely unpopular due to his tax cuts. So, and along with the close Senate race, Democrats are also having a close governor. Well, Republicans are also having a close governor's race, so it's kind of double duty for Republicans in Kansas. Now, under normal circumstances, Brownback should be coasting to a second term in the deep red state, but State House Minority Leader Paul Davis, he's been running a good race. So now there's a couple new polls out that show that this race is now is a Brownback advantage. I'm probably going to put this as toss-up heading into October, but to the final weeks of October. But again, we have to see. This all depends on how everything goes up. Now, Republicans themselves, they're also favored to pick up, as of September, they also favored to pick up Illinois, and they were also favored to pick up Arkansas. They still are to this day. 2006 nominee and the former DEA administrator, Asa Hutchinson versus former Congressman Mike Ross. Hutchinson's been really dominating for most of the race. There was a couple polls that showed Ross ahead. That was towards the early part of the race, and then Rasmussen's decided to give Ross the lead for one poll. That was a bath salt poll, I'm pretty sure, but I would say Republicans are pretty favored to win Arkansas no matter what happens. They're also Governor Nathan Deal versus State Senator Jimmy Carter, who's also the grandson of former President Jimmy Carter, who was also the former governor there. Deal is favored to win. Now, despite some polls that are desperately trying to show Carter ahead, there's also going to be another Carter in Georgia as governor of Georgia. I don't think so, but Deal is close to 50%. There's a couple polls, even public policy polling, which is the Democratic pollster, showed Deal at 50%. That's not a good sign for Carter, really. So, yeah. Now, Democrats also, they're favored to hold Massachusetts, but in the future October updates, this will probably change to a toss-up. Also, Rhode Island, this is another close race. Surprisingly, really close. I thought the Democrats were going to win Rhode Island slam dunk, but Alan Fung, who's the mayor of one Rhode Island cities, I can't remember which one, versus State Treasurer Gina Remigio. This is actually a close race, very close, within 5 to 3 points in favor of Remigio. And Democrats are also favored to hold my home state, Maryland. Mario O'Malley, he's retiring. Governor Lieutenant Anthony Brown versus businessman Larry Hogan. I strongly support Hogan, and I encourage you guys who are Maryland voters to support Hogan. I urge you guys to support him. But as of now, Brown has the advantage. There's a Washington Post poll that showed this race is in 9 points. There's another poll that showed this race was in 4 points. So the point is, Hogan can really win this race if Republicans really focus on it. They can win because Brown is literally blowing a slam dunk right now. So, and I don't think Republicans can afford to squander that opportunity because who knows when they're going to get another chance at a blue state like Maryland. The last time Republicans actually held was fairly recently in 2002. Hogan's trying to follow the early 2002 playbook, and so far it's working. But again, we have to see how the next few polls turn out. And this race Maryland hasn't really been polled a lot recently, but I mean, there was 2 polls out fairly recently, but it hasn't been very polled at all this cycle, which kind of saddens me, really. Okay. Now let's talk about the toss-up races. Alaska, which is probably the most interesting. Governor Sean Parnell was originally in the three-way race between Democratic Mayor Brian Mallett and businessman Bill Walker. Polls showed that Parnell was going to win. But then, at the last second, Walker and Mallett, they formed a fusion ticket. Now, this was in September, by the way. This was just right in time for my update, by the way. That they combined their tickets, and they transformed a safe Republican hold to now a toss-up. So Republicans have two races in Alaska they need to worry about. They're favored to win the Senate, so they don't need to. They're favored to win the Senate seat in Alaska, so they don't need to worry about that too much. But they have to worry about the governor's race there also. Now, Parnell has mixed approval ratings, which isn't that good for him. But hold on, did I raise what? Yeah, what? Okay, so I just need to check something. Anyways, back to Alaska. Now, Walker has been mostly ahead. There was a Fox News poll that showed Parnell up by 5, but then CNN showed that Walker was up by 5. So, Alaska is hard to poll, and polling there is often unreliable. But anyway, by election night, we have to see. So, yeah. Now, Hawaii. Now, Governor Neil Abercrombie faced against State Senator David Ige. Ige won in a landslide. In fact, this is the first Democratic incumbent this cycle to be primary, because in 2010 in Nevada, Sandoval's predecessor, he got primaried by him. Sandoval, he went on to win against Harry Reid's son. So Neil Abercrombie got primary. Now, Ige is facing 2010 nominee and former Lieutenant Governor Duke Ayana. Now, I think Ayana, by all means, is a good candidate. But recent polls ever show that since the Democrat primary, Democrats have coalesced around Ige, now he's probably favored to win at this point. I mean, Hawaii is a deep blue state, honestly, and it takes a good Republican, a very moderate, if not liberal Republican, to win Hawaii. Arizona. State Treasurer Doug Ducey versus former lobbyist Fred Duvall. Originally, this was a kind of a back-and-forth race between the two, but ever since the primary polls have shown that things have been leaning towards Ducey, and there's a couple polls that show them up by double digits. So this could be a leaning R race, but as of the September updates, this is a toss-up. Colorado. Originally, John Hickenlooper, like Senator Mark Udall, was favored to win re-election. Hickenlooper was probably going to face Congressman Tom Tancredo, who ran against Tancredo ran the 2010 third-party race. Hickenlooper ended up winning by double digits just because of that. And so this time, Tancredo ran again, but he was defeated by former Congressman 2006 nominee Bob Beaupre. Bob Beaupre is running a very strong race in Colorado. He's facing Hickenlooper. He's led in a couple polls recently, and he led in a poll a while ago for Queen Paddock, ever since he won the primary in June. But I'd say for the most part, Hickenlooper has been ahead narrowly, though. This is a true toss-up race in Colorado, but I think ultimately, if Garner wins the Senate, I think Beaupre will win the governorship. So, yeah. Beaupre and Garner can really benefit from each other. Now, Wisconsin. Governor Scott Walker versus businesswoman Mary Burke. Well, what to say about this race? Okay, so Governor Walker, he's always had a tough race. Haven't had the greatest time in office. First off, he won. He was swept in 2010, fairly comfortable, and then he was recalled in 2012. He against the same guy who he faced off against in 2010, Tom Barrett, the mayor of Milwaukee. He won by a slightly larger margin, and now he's up against Mary Burke. Now, Walker is considered a 2016 contender, and for the most part, really, Walker has either led or tied Burke. Now, for the most part, that's actually good for Walker because if he actually just only led or tied, people could actually take him seriously in 2016. And recently, a couple polls showed Burke ahead. Now, as of now, I'd say Walker is ahead, but the recent YouGov poll that was taken earlier September showed Burke ahead by 1. Now, that's not a good sign for Walker for his 2016 ambitions, assuming even if he has them. I'm sure he does, but let's just for a minute assume he doesn't. Walker really needs to win if he wants to keep the job, because Republicans... Now, this is the thing in Wisconsin. the opposite party in power. Okay, so for example, if the president's party in power is a Democrat, then the Republican governorship in Wisconsin will be Republican. Likewise, for a Republican president and for a Democratic governor of Wisconsin, Wisconsin's a blue state. It has a good Democratic registration advantage, and it was a good battleground in 2012. It was a good battleground in 2012 because 2012 vice presidential nominee Paul Ryan was from that state. And Wisconsin was only won by Obama by 6 points, so it wasn't like it was anything overwhelmingly. Well, 6 or 7 points, really. Technically, it was 7, almost 7, really. So, I mean, it's not like Obama won overwhelmingly there, but again, it's a relatively blue state, bluish, purplish. But Republicans can win if they play their cards right. So, and after all, Bush almost won in 2000, and he almost won in 2004. Wisconsin was the closest state in 2004. So, ultimately, Walker would probably be favored to win, assuming if there's a good Republican wave out there to carry him to re-election. Now, let's go across the Great Lake to Michigan. Originally, this was probably a leaning R race, or was likely than leaning R, because Governor Rick Snyder, he has low approval ratings, and he's up against former Congressman Mark Schauer, who was wiped out in the 2010 wave. He's struggling with low name recognition, but I guess his name recognition is improved because now the race is really close. Snyder has had a consistent edge, but there has been an occasional break for Schauer in the polls, so. And the recent YouGov poll showed Schauer ahead. Again, that was an earlier point in September, so I can't say if he was ahead by that point. But YouGov polls were released like a couple weeks after I posted my update. So on September, like almost a month later, really. So yeah, but I mean it's a real toss-up between Snyder and Schauer, really. But I think Snyder will ultimately win it. But again, if Snyder isn't at least close to 50%, I think Schauer would be favored to win because unsides tend to break for the challenger by a 2-1 margin, so that's not good for Snyder. Now let's go to Connecticut. In Connecticut, Governor Dan Malloy won his 2010 race by under 1 point. It was that close because things were that bad for Democrats in New England. And so now the 2010 nominee, businessman and former ambassador to Ireland, Tom Foley, he's running again. He's run a good race, really. Foley has been ahead by. Foley has mostly dominated race with him leading or tying Malloy's been ahead in a couple polls, and then recent polls show that it's tied. Couple polls show that's tied. So at this point, Malloy was ahead in 2010, but if it's tied by this point, if we judge by the stand from 2010, Foley is going to win this then, because if he was ahead, like by I'm going to say 7 or 8 points, and now he's tied. I think that Foley is going to win this race, just judging from that standing. So this isn't a leaning R race, but it's kind of in between. It's like kind of tilting, right? But tilting to the Republicans, but it's a toss-up at this point. Maine. Originally, this was a leaning Democratic race because Governor Paul LePage, he's a firebrand conservative. He's a Tea Party guy, who narrowly was swept into the governorship in 2010. And so he's up now against Congressman Mike Michaud, who is openly gay, and he's up against 2010 independent nominee Elliot Coulter. Now, for the most part, Michaud has been dominating the race. And there's been an occasional break for LePage, and now LePage is starting to turn from a lean Democratic race to a toss-up, and as of September, he was able to do that. It's now a toss-up race, and it's still a toss-up race as of October. So, really, it depends how the national dynamics look, and it depends if LePage can just turn down his conservative tone a little bit. Because Maine has a tendency to elect moderates over firebrands, and this is true even if you have a moderate Republican versus a firebrand liberal. Or Democrat, Maine tends to pick the moderates, but really it kind of depends really if LePage is able to do this. And lastly, my birth state, Florida, the Sunshine State. Okay, so here's what happened. So in 2010, Rick Scott, who was a healthcare administrator, he was a businessman, faced off against the chief financial officer in Florida, which was Alex Sink. Now, this was a close race, but ultimately Scott won by a point, 48-47, I think it was. And And now Sink ran for Congress for the special election. She lost to David Jolly, who's now the congressman there. He's running for re-election. I should note there as well. But so now Scott's up for re-election. Now he's up against his predecessor, Charlie Crist, who originally was a Republican. He tried to seek the Senate in 2010, but he lost a primary to Marco Rubio, so then he became an independent. And then he lost the general election to Marco Rubio again. Well, really, he lost to Marco Rubio again. And now he's facing off. And then he turned to a Democrat. Now he's running for his old job back. Now, early on in the race, like late last year, early this year, if you told me that Chris was going to win, I would believe you. If you're going to tell me now in September, I'm not that inclined to believe you, because sure, Chris was dominating for late 2013. Oh, really? He was dominating ever since the race was polled in 2011. But then, like in March, I'd say Scott finally started leading the polls, and it's been more or less consistent for him. It was back and forth, and then it was more or less consistent. Now Chris is starting to bounce back a little. As of October, like, I really don't know where this race stands. But in September, when I did the ratings, this was leaning R, more or less, kind of. But I chose to make it a toss-up because it just really reflects Florida's nature. It's a true toss-up state. And it's really interesting to see how things turn out in Florida. So, yeah. So, anyways, ultimately, this is how things stand. I had 1820. Wait, hold on, something's not right here. That's weird. Something's not right with the model. Well, anyways, let's just focus on this because this is probably more right than I am. Let me just move this over to the side. I don't know what's wrong with the thing, but anyways, so the point is, I rated Rhode Island as likely, but anyways, I think that's more or less kind of too late to fix that now, anyways. So the point is, this is how things were standing in September. On October and 14 in 2 weeks, I will make a new video on October 21st that updates my ratings. I will discuss the races, and I will share with you my final predictions. Because these are kind of like my predictions as of now. These are like how the races stand. So, yeah. So, guys, comment below how you think the 2014 midterms will turn out. Are you rooting for the Democrats, the Republicans, or are you rooting for the Independents? I'm personally rooting for the Republicans, really, and I think they will hold the governorships. They will have a slim majority, I think. But ultimately, I think they'll win, and I think they'll pick up the Senate with like 6 to 8 seats, I'm going to say. And I think that if it's going to be any more than 9, I think that'd be like the wave of the century, really. But then again, let's see. Well, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.